The couple went on a trip, but only the husband came back and he was in a body bag. Have you ever pondered how a seemingly harmless choice could spiral into disaster? Picture this. A couple sets out for a kayaking trip on a perilously windy day, a day marked by meteorologists as one of the year's most hazardous. What began as a routine adventure turned into a nightmare that's hard to believe. Where do we draw the line between a simple error and a fatal misjudgment? How can a minor act or a single word set off a catastrophic chain of events? As you delve into this tale, will you form your own conclusions? Or will it leave you scrutinizing every fragment of the story? Stay tuned because the twists and turns of this saga are just beginning. When lives unravel in the blink of an eye, every choice becomes critical, and every word uttered in haste might just tip the scales in a court of law. Take Angelica's ordeal as a case in point. Nestled in the scenic Hudson Valley, a haven for nature lovers and adrenaline seekers alike, the river offers a picturesque yet treacherous backdrop for kayaking, the sport of choice for many daring spirits. Yet even seasoned kayakers like Angelica Graswald and Vincent Viafor can falter. To them, the river symbolized liberation and intimacy. Charged with anticipation, they embarked on their journey across the Hudson on the chilling evening of April 19th, 2015. Armed with years of kayaking expertise, they should have been prepared. However, that day, nature was not their ally. As gale-force winds whipped up formidable waves, their instincts screamed to turn back, yet they pressed on toward an island crowned with a castle, echoing Scottish lore, a place that always seemed to beckon them with its secrets and solemn beauty. Their day passed in the embrace of the wild, but as dusk approached, their situation grew dire. The menacing waves and frigid waters signaled danger, forcing them to make a pivotal decision. Stranded without overnight gear, remaining on the island was too perilous. Tragedy struck when Vincent's kayak began to fill with water, setting the stage for a harrowing ordeal. Without a life vest in the frigid waters, Vincent's situation quickly became dire. Overcome with panic, Angelica made an urgent call to emergency services. She frantically explained that the formidable waves prevented her from reaching him and that the currents were dragging him further into the river's grasp. The dispatcher faced challenges in determining their precise location, exacerbating the urgency of the rescue. As precious minutes ticked by, Vincent began to disappear beneath the water's surface. Rescue teams hurried to the scene, but by their arrival, it was tragically too late. Vincent had vanished from sight, and the encroaching darkness only deepened the gravity of the situation. Now, let's delve deeper into Angelica's background. At 35, Angelica harbored lofty ambition. A passionate photographer, she envisioned a future lensing the world. Born Angelica Lips in Latvia, she migrated in search of greater prospects. After 2 marriages and 2 divorces, her aspirations remained undeterred. To establish herself in the U.S., secure a work visa, and carve out a career. Fortune smiled on her when she secured a nanny position, which brought her stateside. Her life took a pivotal turn after meeting Vincent. Vincent, age 46, had also experienced 2 divorces and was thriving in the construction industry. Despite their age difference, their romance blossomed swiftly. Now, focusing on Vincent, he was known for his generosity, often hosting gatherings that brought friends together for lively, spirited occasions. It was at one of these events that he crossed paths with Angelica. Mere weeks later, she had moved into his residence in the quaint town of Poughkeepsie, New York. Their relationship escalated quickly with frequent discussions about marriage and family. However, underlying tensions were simmering. On April 18th, 2015, just one day before their ill-fated kayaking trip, they attended a party where Vincent enjoyed the company of friends, but Angelica departed early, citing illness. Angelica was notably reserved and distant during the gathering, barely mingling with others. The tension between her and Vincent was palpable, marked by a subtle but noticeable discord noticed by his friends. Though the disagreement that evening was minor, it was clear the air was thick with unease. They parted ways that night, only to reunite the following morning when Vincent revealed his plans for the day. Eager to mend their fraying relationship, he proposed a kayaking trip on the Hudson River, envisioning it as an opportunity for them to reconnect amidst the tranquility of nature. Despite the chilly conditions and a brisk wind that hinted at an unforgiving day ahead, Angelica acquiesced. They aimed to visit Bannerman's castle on a small island, planning a photo shoot amidst its storied ruins. Angelica packed several elegant outfits, hoping the picturesque setting would yield stunning photographs. By noon, they were at the river's edge, ready to embark on their journey despite the increasingly hostile weather. The wind intensified, stirring massive waves and chilling their bones, yet Vincent's thrill-seeking spirit and stubborn resolve urged them forward. Before they set off, he made a remark that would later echo ominously in Angelica's memory. "This will be the adventure of your life." Their trip to the castle unfolded without incident, and Angelica later told police they had a couple of beers to lighten the mood, mindful that they needed to remain alert for the journey back. However, the return trip took a perilous turn. Vincent lagged behind as the waves surged higher, and he soon yelled out that his kayak was taking on water. Angelica saw his kayak succumbing to the river. She attempted to paddle back to him, but the strong current swept her towards the shore instead. Frantically reaching land, she immediately contacted emergency services. By then, however, Vincent had vanished beneath the cold waters of the Hudson River, leaving Angelica alone with the haunting reality of their adventure. The evening of April 19, 2015, ushered in an extensive search operation that stretched into the following day. Divers submerged into the Hudson's murky depths in pursuit of Vincent's body, while boats equipped with sonar fought against fog and turbulent waves. Rescue helicopters crisscrossed the sky overhead, but despite these rigorous efforts, no trace of Vincent was found. Amidst this chaos, Vincent's family grappled with shock and disbelief, clinging to the faint hope that he might have miraculously survived the harsh conditions of the freezing river and strong currents. Yet, even in their hopeful moments, they understood the grim reality of his chances. In stark contrast to everyone's distress, Angelica's demeanor stood out as unusually composed. Throughout this tumultuous period, she regularly updated her social media profiles, sharing photos and videos as though life continued as normal. This behavior struck Vincent's family as not only odd, but deeply insensitive, bordering on suspicious. Angelica defended her actions by claiming she was keeping hope alive for her fiancé's safe return, but her public displays failed to resonate with the bereaved family. 10 days after Vincent vanished, a casual comment Angelica had made during her initial interactions with the police led to her returning to the station for further questioning. She had mentioned, perhaps inadvertently, that she might have removed the drain plug from Vincent's kayak during their return journey. This seemingly minor detail pivoted the direction of the investigation dramatically. What was previously considered a tragic accident now morphed into a scenario riddled with doubts and questions. Angelica also revealed that Vincent's paddle had been compromised, it had lost a locking ring, making it cumbersome to use. These revelations intensified the investigators' suspicions, leading them to contemplate the possibility of foul play. The combination of a broken paddle and a missing kayak plug painted a troubling picture, prompting police to probe whether Angelica might have orchestrated a deadly scenario for Vincent. The question now looming over the investigation was clear. What motive could Angelica possibly have for wanting Vincent dead? The puzzle of motive hung unresolved, leaving gaps in the narrative that investigators were eager to fill. They began probing deeper into Angelica's background by contacting individuals from her past, including her former boyfriend, Michael Coven, with whom she had lived years before. Michael expressed his shock upon hearing the allegations against Angelica, but conceded that he could not entirely dismiss them. He described Angelica as having a darker side that emerged especially under the influence of alcohol. According to Michael, she could become confrontational and prone to instigating arguments, behaviors that Vincent reportedly endured in silence. Just weeks before the fatal incident, Vincent had confided in a close friend about his doubts over marrying Angelica. He portrayed her as manipulative and increasingly aggressive, traits that were exacerbated during their heated exchanges. While Angelica acknowledged the presence of conflicts within their relationship, she insisted they were confined to personal disputes and misunderstandings. Her evasive responses and the vague manner in which she addressed the queries raised further suspicion among the detectives. As the investigation deepened, accumulating evidence began to suggest that Vincent's demise might have been orchestrated rather than accidental. The potential motive was chillingly clear: financial gain. Angelica stood to inherit a substantial amount from Vincent's life insurance policy, estimated to be around $500,000. This sum represented a significant windfall that could alleviate her financial burdens and provide a new beginning, particularly as she was unemployed. The revelation of her being the primary beneficiary shifted perceptions dramatically, casting Angelica in a suspicious light. Despite her persistent claims of innocence, the mounting evidence led to her arrest. Charged with second-degree criminal wrongdoing, Angelica was held on a staggering $9 million bail, an amount beyond her means, reflecting the severity of the charges and her potential flight risk due to her foreign status. Thus, she remained in custody, awaiting her day in court to face the grave accusations against her. Angelica's defense team challenged the validity of her statements made during the arduous 11-hour interrogation, asserting that they were not legally binding. Her attorney emphasized the absence of Vincent's body and the lack of forensic evidence, arguing that these factors made it impossible to conclusively establish foul play or intentional harm. The defense posited that Vincent's death was an unfortunate accident, suggesting that the kayak had capsized due to a wave and that the drain plug might have loosened only after the kayak began to sink. To substantiate their claims, they conducted a controlled experiment on the Hudson River, using a person of similar stature to Vincent and the same model of kayak. During the experiment, it was observed that the kayak sat dangerously low in the water, barely a few inches above the surface, even under calm conditions. This demonstration aimed to show that significant waves could readily overwhelm the kayak, filling it with water regardless of the state of the drain plug. The defense also highlighted that Vincent had consumed alcohol, which could have compromised his ability to coordinate and react appropriately. Amidst this backdrop of a potentially flooded kayak, questionable confessions, and practical demonstrations, the debate intensified. With Vincent's body yet to be recovered, the investigation pressed on, focusing on the controversial drain plug, a component as small as a fingertip, yet at the heart of the tragic narrative. Further tests were conducted to dispel doubts about the drain plug's role in the sinking. A simulation was set up using the same kayak model, a mannequin approximating Vincent's weight, and environmental conditions similar to that tragic day. These experiments revealed that even with the drain plug removed, the influx of water into the kayak was minimal, merely a slow trickle that was unlikely to cause immediate capsizing. This evidence suggested that even without the drain plug, the kayak should have been capable of staying afloat long enough for Vincent to reach the shore, which was approximately a mile away. This finding added a complex layer to the defense's argument, challenging the notion that a minor mechanical failure could lead directly to such a catastrophic outcome. Despite the defense's successful demonstration that the missing drain plug likely did not cause the kayak to capsize, the prosecution pivoted their focus to another element, the damaged paddle that was missing its locking ring. They suggested that this defect could have impaired Vincent's ability to maneuver the kayak effectively. However, the defense was ready to counter this claim as well. They conducted tests to show that even without the locking ring, the paddle remained robust and functional. It could still be used effectively, challenging the prosecution's assertion that the paddle's condition significantly contributed to the tragedy. Yet, during her interrogation, Angelica had admitted to handling both Vincent's paddle and the plug. This admission fueled the prosecution's argument and became a central point in the charges against her. The police viewed these actions as part of a meticulously planned crime. Seemingly innocuous details like touching the paddle or inadvertently coming into contact with the plug were interpreted as deliberate and suspicious. Despite the mounting narrative crafted by the prosecution, Angelica's defense team remained steadfast. Angelica's lawyer contended that her admissions during the interrogation were the result of intense emotional pressure and should be viewed skeptically. To strengthen this defense, they introduced testimony from a false confessions expert who had analyzed the entire 11-hour interrogation. The expert testified that the interrogation techniques used by the detectives likely exerted undue psychological pressure on Angelica. The expert highlighted how detectives employed classic coercive tactics, posing leading questions, alternating between sympathetic and aggressive demeanors, good cop, bad cop, rushing her responses, and pressuring her to repeat specific phrases that aligned with their narrative. Throughout the interrogation, Angelica appeared confused and emotionally unstable, which the expert argued was indicative of her vulnerable state. Furthermore, the defense argued that a particular statement made by Angelica, where she mentioned having once fantasized about being free from the relationship, was misinterpreted by the detectives as a motive for murder. According to the defense, this offhand remark was unrelated to the events leading to Vincent's presumed death and had been unfairly construed as an admission of guilt. This highlighted the complexities of relying solely on interrogation statements to establish motive and intent, especially under duress. Angelica's mention of freedom was a general expression of her frustration with their long-standing relationship issues, not an indication of criminal intent. The interrogation expert pointed out that Angelica never used words like crime or death in that context. Instead, her Her statements appeared shaped more by the influence of the investigators than by her own volition. The detectives, focused on building their case, disregarded these nuances. Once they believed they had sufficient evidence, they ignored any subsequent clarifications from Angelica. The defense emphasized that the issues with Vincent's kayak, particularly the drain plug, were long-standing and well-known to the couple. Angelica testified that they had often kayaked without the plug securely in place, and it had never previously led to any serious issue. Despite the hazardous weather conditions on the day of the tragedy, the defense maintained that it was these external elements, not any deliberate act by Angelica, that were to blame. However, the prosecution painted a different picture, suggesting that Angelica, weary of her relationship and eyeing the financial benefits from Vincent's life insurance, orchestrated an accident to free herself both emotionally and financially. The grueling length of Angelica's interrogation only added to her distress. As time blurred and the questioning intensified, particularly about the drain plug, her ability to maintain a clear narrative began to falter. The detectives exploited these moments of weakness, perceiving her emotional breakdown as an opportunity to press harder. The critical moment arrived when an emotionally drained Angelica requested to leave the interrogation to tend to her cat at home. Her tears during this request were seen by the detectives as a breakthrough, prompting them to increase the pressure with a series of leading questions. Though Angelica never explicitly confessed to any wrongdoing, the relentless nature of the interrogation led her to provide inconsistent and unclear answers. An expert reviewing the footage later noted that Angelica's fatigued and overwhelmed state during the interrogation likely contributed to her inconsistent responses. These were not conscious admissions of guilt, but rather the effects of intense emotional pressure. The expert concluded that her primary aim was to end the relentless questioning, a state of mind that led her to provide responses that became central to the prosecution's case. As the search for Vincent stretched into weeks, the uncertainty and grief of his family and friends only intensified. It wasn't until the morning of May 23, 2015, nearly a month after his disappearance, that a boater discovered Vincent's body near Bannerman's Island, the location he and Angelica had visited on the day he went missing. The autopsy concluded that Vincent had drowned with no evidence of foul play or physical struggle. Although alcohol was present in his system, its levels were not high enough to be deemed a significant factor in his death. The conditions of that day, particularly the cold water and severe weather, were noted as the primary challenges he faced. Vincent's kayak, recovered shortly after his body, was indeed missing its drain plug, and the paddle lacked its locking ring, confirming previous suspicions. However, these findings did not necessarily implicate Angelica in any wrongdoing. The defense argued that the tragedy resulted from a confluence of hazardous conditions: the chilly waters, gusty winds, absence of a life jacket, and even the minimal alcohol influence rather than any direct action by Angelica. Meanwhile, the prosecution continued to build their case around the inconsistencies in Angelica's accounts of the event. They proposed that she had manipulated the kayak equipment deliberately, creating a perilous situation that Vincent was unlikely to survive. This narrative painted a picture of a premeditated act designed to end Vincent's life. On the other hand, Angelica's attorney portrayed the incident as a tragic accident, attributing the cause to Vincent's own choices. He highlighted that Vincent had knowingly risked his life by venturing out onto the river in poor conditions, without a life jacket, and slightly under the influence. Vincent was aware of the dangers posed by the freezing waters, yet chose to proceed. Despite Angelica's assertions of innocence, the case's complexity deepened when the prosecution recognized that proving her intent to cause harm might be untenable. The acts of removing a drain plug and damaging a paddle, they realized, were not only indirect, but also insufficiently conclusive to persuade a jury of her guilt in an intended murder. This realization marked a pivotal shift in the prosecutorial approach, acknowledging the challenges in proving a direct link between her actions and the fatal outcome. The defense's arguments resonated strongly during the trial, with experts affirming that the tragic circumstances could indeed lead to such an accident. Faced with a compelling defense and a case that was less than ironclad, the prosecution reached a critical juncture. They offered Angelica a plea deal, suggesting she plead guilty to involuntary manslaughter instead of facing a potential life sentence for a more severe charge. Angelica accepted the deal, resulting in a sentence of 4 years in prison for involuntary manslaughter. Given the time she had already spent in custody during the trial and awaiting the outcome, she only had a few months remaining on her sentence. Ultimately, Angelica was released on parole in December 2017 after serving 32 months behind bars, significantly less than her official sentence due to the time already served and provisions for early release. Though technically sentenced to 4 years, the parole system enabled her early release, allowing her to regain her freedom by late 2017. However, her release did not end the controversy or the emotional strife surrounding the case. Vincent's family continued to express their belief that Angelica was responsible for his death, and they were openly critical of what they perceived as a lenient sentence. For her part, Angelica maintained her innocence regarding the direct cause of Vincent's death, attributing the events to a tragic accident and claiming that only she and God knew the full truth. Her life post-release was fraught with challenges. She faced potential deportation, struggled to secure employment, and was unable to claim Vincent's insurance benefits due to her guilty plea. Eventually, Angelica was compelled to return to her home country. There, she sought to put the past behind her, enrolling in university, securing employment, and striving to move forward from the ordeal. Despite these efforts, the case remained shrouded in mystery and controversy, with unresolved questions about Vincent's death, Angelica's actions, and the conflicting testimonies that characterized the trial. The truth, it seemed, might remain elusive, leaving more questions than answers in the wake of this complex legal and human drama.